the cat display.
All right.
The
It looks
stream
like
is
we're live.
we're going. We're doing it.
Oh,
Going.
hello. It's good to see you.
Yes. Thanks for coming to the stream today. So we're going to talk about getting the most out of playtesting events, and we'll start with some intros. So I'm Emily Vincent. I'm a game designer, and this year I'm a Gamma Horizon Fellow publisher as well. And so I've been to a number of playtesting events for the past few years and excited to talk about it.
Hey, Eric, go for it.
Oh, okay. I'm Eric Slauson. I'm a game designer, a game editor, game content writer, a lot of plate spinning. And I've been going to Unpub and Protospiel and all kinds of other playtesting events, and also treating my game nights as playtesting events, much to my friends' dismay sometimes when the games don't go well. But yeah, so I'm excited to be here to talk about playtesting and how to get the most out of it.
Cool. Well, my name's Kathleen Mercury. I've taught game design for, I think, like 17-ish years to kids. I run a lot of different like game jams for people online and in person. I'm a designer, and I'm getting into a whole new area where I'm designing game-based learning interactive experiences for different clients. And that's a whole other way to think about when it comes to playtesting, because it's live, and that's when you do it is when you play test it. And so it's just a whole new perspectives on every aspect of the human element of game design, which I think is what playtesting is really about.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome. So we've got a tiny little structure here, and we wanted to start with how do you prepare for a playtesting event? So Kathleen, I'm just going to pop it right back to you. How do you prepare for a playtesting event?
Well, I think the main thing for me as a designer is you have to know what you want to get out of it. In the beginning, it's hard, and I don't really expect that, for a brand new designer. Like, they want to get their gameplay tested, they want to see it. Over time, with experience, one, I know I'm not probably going to play through the whole thing unless that's something that I've already prepared, like, I've already play tested lots of little bits and pieces and it's time for a full run through. I would also make sure when it comes to the play test that I let people know that, and that's getting into but still you have to think about like, what is it that you're wanting to get out of it? And sometimes it's just testing one particular system. Sometimes it's the whole thing. And I remember one time I was play testing a game from a very well-known designer, and it was this big worker placement board, and we're doing stuff. And I said, well, what's happening over here? Because there's like spaces on the board and names and spots. He's like, I don't know yet. And I was like, okay, awesome. Like, I'd never seen that before. But I was like, that's true. You don't necessarily have to have all of it. So I would say the first thing is knowing what are the things that I'm looking for. And the second thing that goes with it is just know that if you're going to cut it at some point. Once you get the information you need, like, I know I'm going to cut it. And so so that's just where that focus really helps.
Yeah, I'd say kind of the same thing. A lot of my feedback or my little advice is going to come from the perspective of somebody who primarily does like party games. I do some strategy, some RPG, other kind of stuff, but most of the things that I'm testing or the things that I have published are party games. So when I'm kind of planning or what to bring, I'm trying to bring as many as I can, because I know that they're faster to prototype. So if I have like an hour-long table or 2-hour-long table, I can probably fit in like 10 rounds or 20 rounds or whatever of just like boom, boom, boom. And then also I'm trying to test the core because like a party game, it's like you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's like one type of joke or one silly thing, or you're stacking or whatever it is over and over. So like I have to make sure that one thing is fun over and over and over again. So I take some time to kind of, figure out what are the little, in like, scientific experiment, like what are the variables I can tweak? Like, I'm using the example of monstrosity, like, you look at the card for a certain amount of time and then you describe it to everybody for a certain amount of time they're drawing. And that was something in the play testing. I was like, okay, I need to test it at 20 seconds memorizing, 2 minutes drawing, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, like just different, what is too long, what is just enough, what's too much pressure, what's, so I mean, honestly, just have like a spreadsheet or whatever of those different variables and say like, oh, this is way too fast or this is way too slow. So yeah, just those little micro things that you can tweak, especially if you have kind of an instinct of like, this might be overpowered or this might be, too frustrating or whatever. Like that might be a thing that I kind of prime my playtesters for. Like, here's what I'm looking for feedback on this specific aspect. So
Yeah, I think I do something similar, but I've been doing it specifically with components to sort of see if I have ideas that need different components. I will actually bring, this is actually probably a terrible idea, but I bring like 4 or 5 different versions of the components that I'm trying to test out. And
Oh, that's
sometimes
cool.
it's like a theory, right? Of like, does it make more sense as a treasure chest or a jewel? Like if I'm at that stage of the game. But sometimes it's like I want to be able to A/B test right there. And so
Yeah.
I'll bring 3 decks of cards, which is heavy in your suitcase and kind of a pain to sleeve them all. But it's been really useful when I could just sort of do a play test, be like, I saw that. I'm going to pull out the other deck right now and just play the next one this way. And it gives me that sort of apples to apples comparison in the moment that I find really useful that I can't really do on like a playtesting night.
Yeah.
But I can do if I'm there for like a couple hours at a table.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think all of this is especially when you are further down the road. As I said, because especially if you're brand new and you're just getting your game on the table, get your game on the table, play test it. Because even just doing that for the first time, that's an accomplishment. Seriously.
Absolutely.
I will play anybody's bad, terrible game because trust me, I've made worse, right? And I always say I am a bad game designer. I design lots of bad games, and playtesting is like how you make them better. So just get it on the table, put it out there. You're like, I don't know if it's going to work, but let's have some fun and, rip it to shreds. That's one other thing is I always say, I can't, and I think maybe this has been being a woman, because sometimes people, tend to have a hard time giving me critical feedback. And the thing that I've learned to say over time is, I know this game has problems. I cannot fix them unless you tell me what you think they are, because that's what I'm looking to do. And just that kind of helps them be like, oh, okay. Because if they think I'm there for validation, or they think they have to give me validation, and that's not necessarily a guy thing too. I mean, anybody can be like that. People want to be nice, which is cool. But I make it very clear that I cannot fix this game unless you tell me just how bad it is.
Yeah. So one thing that's not specific to preparing my prototype or preparing my game is I don't want to overdo it, but I want to put a little bit of thought into how I'm going to tell people about the game, right? So what's my like sentence when they're walking by the table? And what's my outline of my teach, right? Because I can make a 5-minute teach be a 20-minute teach like that if I don't if I don't put like a little bit of thought into it ahead of time. And so sometimes like for my teach, I'll have like a little bulleted, like first tell them about the board, then tell them about the points, then show the tiles or something like that to like see if the teach works in that direction. But also just sort of like, at some of these bigger events, right, like an Unpub or something like that, people will swing by and be like, what's this? And they're looking for like just that little sentence that you can say that they're like, oh, okay, sure, I'll sit down, right?
Yeah.
That's super important because, you need to have like the 2-sentence version. Imagine a world where Donkey Kong met with 18XX, just that puke. I mean, I don't understand it, but they know where you're going. And when you teach it too, you want to go big to small. And maybe I'm getting into like, again, further down the road, but especially I work at a university. I'm trying to get a game design group of students going there. So there's a lot who've never done anything before, which is great, which is super awesome. And I love teaching game design to anybody. but especially like the teach of games can be the obstacle. So practice.
Yeah.
Practice teaching the game, record yourself teaching the game to yourself, set up a camera. You know, it helps you a lot with the rules too. But yeah, planning the teach is such an important thing, and you will get better at it, and you'll be bad at it first. And we love that, so it's okay. But planning that teach is so critical to like getting people to where you want them to be as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 18 Donkey Kong is now a thing. So
See that at our next playtesting event.
yeah, Emily, I'm going to pitch that to you
Okay.
in about 3 minutes. So
I love it. I love
here we
it.
go.
Let's go. So I think, right, we got our prototype. We got a sort of, how do I talk about it? How do I teach it?
Mhm.
I don't know, anything else you do to prepare, or should we jump right to like, what do you do when you get there?
Bring your little, I like your components idea, the different versions of the components. Just like on a larger thing, like prep objects. So like have pack pens, Sharpies, extra index cards. Like a lot of the prototype conventions will have like a big table full of like bits and
Right.
holes and all kinds of stuff. So that's useful. But like, I can't. The number of times somebody has been, said, "Oh, well, what if we had powers like this?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, amazing. Give me like 5 minutes, and then I can pull out index cards and like write those real quick and just insert them into the game."
Yeah.
So it's good
I
to have
need little stickers, little blank ones that you get for like garage sales. Because if you've got, so this is going to sound like a plug, but I make no money from this. I have a website, KathleenMercury.com, and it's where I post all my game design resources on teaching game design. And if you go to prototyping, I've got a blank card template. It works with Google Docs. So you can literally just type on there, it's the ugliest, fastest, cheapest way to do it, which is how I roll.
Yeah.
And so you just print those out. They're the size of playing cards. So I just take those, an old playing card, magic card, stuff them in the sleeve, and you're off and running. So I like to make things as like modifiable as possible, because if you spend a lot of money to have cards printed, you're not going to want to change them or throw them out after all that work. So so with that, I don't care if I write on them, but if you get those little garage sale stickers, if you just want to change one thing like the number value or something like that, you just put it on there, you put it right on top, and you're off and running, because you just want to be nimble and quick. I think when it comes to like taking prototypes from level to level. And so, yeah, have your little game designer kit, a pencil sharpener, and a pair of scissors, tape, because those are the things that you can never find when you really want them.
Snacks don't hurt. Candy does not hurt. I have a little playtester incentive. Yeah.
The scissors, if you're flying, check in a bag. I think I check bags now, mostly so I can bring my scissors. But I also have a folder, like an 8.5 by 11 size folder, that I keep like a couple of sheets of like cardstock and paper, a handful of cell sheets, right? But I was at Origins last year, and I pulled out my little cardstock and I drew a ship. I'm doing a pirate game, right? And I drew a ship and I made a board just right there, right? And so having something that was a little bit bigger than card size, if your game might have a board or something like that in the middle, can also be useful. But like, you don't need to bring a ream of paper. I may or may not have done something closer to that. A couple pieces, right? You're probably not doing 18 iterations during this event.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
okay.
I was just gonna say, as far as things that I'm thinking in packing mode now, like if I'm packing for my prototype convention, thinking about how you're going to record feedback. So I'm thinking of, I have my system now. I'm sure we all have our systems, but as a first time designer, I'm like looking around for receipts in my wallet to write, and because I hadn't thought about that, but. Yeah, like some playtest conventions, they have, like survey cards or whatever, but that's like the playtesters doing it after they've already left the table, or they might not get around to doing it or whatever. So you want to figure out some system that works for you for writing notes in the moment, and especially it gives you an opportunity to think about those questions, and kind of put that into that format. So some people will have like journals that they use. Some people do like Google Keep or Notepad or Notes app on iPhone or whatever. But yeah, just have a plan for how you're going to write down everything that everybody says, whether you agree with it or not. Just go ahead and write it down as something that was brought up.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead, Kathleen.
No, I think I'm going to follow that, but later.
Yeah, so this may be going a little too far, but so I mentioned I'm trying to become a publisher and things like that. So I have a
You're a
couple other things,
publisher.
like I am a publisher. I'm working on
You
that
did
first
it.
game, doing it.
Love it.
So I have business cards, and a way to connect with me and follow me online. That's not going to work, or that's not going to be needed for everyone, right?
Mhm.
I make a little 8.5 by 11 like sign about the game that's got the name of the game and like a little bit of clip art and the length and stuff like that. So again, so if I'm busy and someone walks by, they can get the gist of what we're doing. And I bring a tablecloth. It's in my
Oh,
brand colors.
amazing.
It's hot pink. But I put a tablecloth and it gives it like a little bit of pop in the room of like people are like, what's going on over there? And I learned this trick from Matthew Hawker. But he just went to Joanne Fabrics and got like a couple yard length of like suede, like a faux suede. And it has this like, it feels like a really nice like poker
Oh,
table sort
that's
of situation.
brilliant.
And so I do that. Matthew does that. I know the game designers in North Carolina group, they all sort of have matching tablecloths. But sometimes, like, if you're looking to, just make it all, if you're, again, probably later in the
Sure.
playtesting stage, right? But if you're trying to brand and stuff like that, you can think about those things for a playtesting event as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
just
love that.
know that board games and carry-ons will get your backpack pulled.
Yes.
Yes.
It's for just so you know, you make
Yeah.
a lot of TSA folks, and that's good.
Especially metal coins. I have a bag of metal coins, and TSA has to dump the entire thing out to ensure that there are no razor blades in it. So my coins
Interesting.
they go into
But
the
now you
checked
can't
bag
bring your
too.
razor blades. That sucks.
Yeah, I know,
It's an
right? They
integral
go in the checked
component to
bag.
the game.
Oh my god. A dexterity game where you reach in. Is it a metal cleaner? Razor blades. Eric, let's work on that.
There you go.
We can just call it stumps.
We're kind of going into things
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do during, I think, the good natural transition. But as a kind of a bridge thing, thinking about in the same way of how are you going to pitch the game and how are you going to what's the hook how are you going to get people to the table, that kind of stuff. You only have your table for a certain amount of time, so you want to be efficient with your time. You want to get them playing and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I also think about is how to have the table like kind of set up and ready to go so that people can just sit down and like, I've already dealt you 5 cards. I've already, these are already the 3 powers that we're playing with. It helps you just like point to things on the table quickly and say like, these are the power cards. This is the board. These are your cards. This is whatever. But also, and this is a thing from like you pick up from demoing games at conventions to people. If you kind of cook the deck a little bit, or you already know what cards your opponent has or what you have or whatever, you can kind of start you can kind of play around or test some very specific things. So if you're worried about some wild overpowered combo or whatever, like just go ahead and have that set up in the cards and give it to the playtester or whatever and see see what happens, see if they pick up on that being really, really strong at the beginning. But yeah, I think you don't want to kind of show up to the table and, like you pulling stuff out of your bag and fumbling around. Oh, where are these cards? Where are these cards? Where are these cards? And no, these aren't it. This is the one I want to do. So just organization in general, I think. Yeah.
But if you're in a pitch, stacking the deck so that they see all the fun parts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because then they're like they'll be able to get the game and what makes it fun, that special sauce, so much faster. And the
Mhm.
other thing too is on the other side, you get really good feedback from publishers. It can be
Mhm.
very specific just to them and their needs, but generally, like pay attention to what they say, like what would you change in this and that. And
Mhm.
especially if you put what you think are the most fun things out there and they don't think so, that's a really good
Yeah.
moment. That's a good
Yeah.
thing, because that's a point where like you may need to pivot. Maybe not, but you may need to pivot if it's your best work out there and it's not working.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'm gonna try
Yeah,
to
go
post
for
a
it.
comment.
Yeah.
Hopefully it works because there's a URL. But basically, I am running for Gamma, what's called Designer Day, and it is a day of game design. But there's lots of sessions, professional development for lots of professional development, and it's going to be great. It's free for gamers, and it is, and with the free badge that you get to Designer Day, you also get free entrance to Expo, which is huge if you want, because it's one of the best cons out there, for because it's industry. It's one of the best pitching cons out there. It's where a lot of published designers get a lot of work done. So I'm posting the description, because all the different sessions and all that other stuff. And then I don't know if they're going to actually let me post this. This comment had, so some of this got chopped up. It looks a little messy, but yep, it's not letting me post the
It's
actual link.
going. We got some stuff in there.
Yeah, no, who, but like it doesn't have
It's
the
the
link.
link.
So
Oh,
if
I see.
yeah, that's okay. If people email me, okay, that is okay. This whole thing, I don't know why it's only copying and pasting chunks, but that's okay. Designer.day@gamma.org. Yes, email me there, and then I can get you squared up with the link to register. So do that. There's lots of super cool people that are going to be talking at a really high level.
Oh,
Non-public
awesome.
posted, and cool. And Twitter, yes, it's free. I mean, other than you have to get to Louisville, pay for a hotel and all that other stuff, but from a game design industry perspective, like huge event. There's going to be time for play testing. There's going to be time for publishers to come around and sniff out what's going on. There's going to be networking events. So if you can
Yeah.
swing it, especially this close to the day, it'll be great.
I do
Yeah,
want
I'll be
to
there.
address after
Yeah, go for it.
the comment here from Heart Shaped Sky.
Yes.
I this is this is Amy, who runs Pink Tiger Games, which if you haven't checked out, check out those games. She makes some really cool stuff.
Mhm.
She says, I picture a retailer who always goes for the middle random area of my card game decks, so I can never stack the deck. So that's a great trick for a particular type of game. Amy's games are conversational. They're party games. They're making connections, and they really
They're about
thrive.
kindness.
Yes, they're positivity, except for her new one, Hurt Party, which is about apologizing. But um,
That's funny.
the for party games, I would say that is a caveat. Like you want to be able to pull something random and have your party game still work. That's a good thing for you to play test if you're doing a party game. Like if only some of the prompts are working, or if only these 5 cards are the ones that people are laughing about, and the other 95 don't make people laugh or whatever, then okay, whatever you're doing with those 5 cards, that's what you need to figure out how to do for the other one. So
Yeah.
that's a goal that if you're trying to test a party game, then set up the components, but maybe not like the ideal, the jokes that you always know land or whatever.
Mhm.
That's something that I try to do, is kind of prove to myself that the whole system works, not just this one card or this one combination or whatever it is. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I'll jump in with another plug, which is that tomorrow at NunPub, we're doing a panel on how to prepare for a pitch, and a bunch of
Oh,
this is in there, so I'll be there.
yeah, there you
I'll
go.
be on that panel. So swing by. It's tomorrow afternoon. Um,
And
so yeah,
to that
yeah.
point, you don't know a lot of times who your playtester is. So treat everybody with kindness and respect and do whatever, but also assume that everybody is a publisher potentially, because they might be. A lot of publishers intentionally don't wear their badge that says publisher or whatever,
Mhm.
and so you just kind of take it seriously. Somebody in high school told me that every day is an interview, and I've like
Mhm.
always kept that with me, and kind of just, you never know who you're talking to, or who they know, or what's going to happen. So, and Monstrosity and Tattoo Stories, two of my games, were signed from pitches that I did not know I was getting. I was playing them at a playtesting event, and I was like, oh yeah, here's this game, and just, hey, talk to these people or whatever, and they left, and another group of people came in, and then like a couple hours later they came back and said, hey, like let's set up a meeting, and I didn't know that I had been pitching to a publisher. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just take every pitch seriously. You never know.
So for me, one of my favorite things that I've done is what years and years ago, when I was in the St. Louis board game meetup group when I was just getting started, like kind of getting, a little success and that. And, we'd have people come and go to the meetup group. And it happened a lot, where someone would bring their game and you play test it, you give them feedback, and they didn't want to hear it. And they left, and you knew you were never going to see them again, and you didn't. And you know what? I mean, and the thing is, like, that's okay, because if they just wanted to make a thing and they didn't want to hear negative things about their baby, then yeah, awesome. Keep your thing at home. Like if you want to get it published, I think it's different, but still.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have people who show up out of like nowhere, And one time, there were these two guys that showed up about a game about winemaking. And I was like, winemaking? Well, how is that going to be a game, and stuff like that. Well, I learned a really important lesson that also don't underestimate people, because sometimes they turn into really big publishers later, because viticulture maybe started some stuff. So, I mean, I wasn't snobby or mean or rude, but like I was kind of dismissive a little bit, because they were in my head, not publicly, like, oh, who are these guys? And obviously. So we all learn lessons. We all grow up,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think that's one of those things where now I just really try to intentionally, I just take everybody seriously. And I think sometimes the college kids that I work with, they're like, we're not thinking we want to publish. I was like, oh, okay. Because I was just thinking, like, if you got a cool idea, like, why not get it out there? But that's just, they're so new to it that I'm just like saying, hey, go play Major League Baseball. It's fine. It's a little more. I've had to dial it back. You got to know your crowd.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So
So I
playtesting
love
events.
hearing people's tips and tricks for playtesting during the playtest. And I've learned some really cool stuff from other people that I'm excited to talk about. Emily, what's yours?
Mine during I actually wanted to talk about the event as a whole.
Do
So
it.
maybe
Oh yeah, go for it.
so I guess I'm gonna take us immediately off track, which is I think if when I'm going to a playtesting event, the biggest mistake that I've made is trying to spend the whole time playtesting my game, right? So I want
Mm,
to playtest other people's games to
Mhm.
see what else is going on, and I want to be a part of the community, right? I want to make friends. So the more of these I've gone to, the more time I'm taking to sort of carve out away from playing a game and just like connect with someone and get coffee and also get food because food is important. And every
yes.
time Ben Beagle sees me at a unpub, he asks, "Have I eaten?" And the answer is no. And
Mm.
it's not a good day. It's not a good weekend, right? So like stop and eat, chat
Mm-hmm.
with someone, go to a panel and learn something, have a quiet moment in the lobby, right? I mean, I think there's so many things going on at like a multi-day playtesting event that pacing yourself, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me, pacing myself is really important. And there's so many other great things that you can try out, right? So at Unpub Prime, right, there's a networking dinner on one of the first nights that I met so many great people. I haven't made it to a feedback frenzy. I hear great things.
Pretty
When I
fun.
do Proto Spiel online, I now make it a point to spend time in the coffee chat, right? And just go and like talk to whoever's talking. I walked in at one point and they were talking about the quarterbacking problem in co-op games, which was something I was facing at that moment, right? And so it was like kismet. So it's taken me a while to be able to rein back in from I'm at a playtesting event. I want to be playtesting the entire time, and make sure I'm meeting people and being a human and being a part of our community.
Mhm.
So that's my pitch for playtesting events.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah. You have
Yeah.
to take care of yourself. I mean, you're as an introvert extrovert kind of person. I frequently I'm to like go back to my hotel room or just go sit in my car for like an hour or a couple hours or whatever. And when I was first getting into the hobby, you're spending this money to go to this event or whatever. It's like, okay, this is dead time, or this is I should be in there. I'm missing something, but it's you're doing nobody any favors if you're really struggling or getting too anxious or struggling to even get through your own pitch because you're so exhausted or you're so hungry or whatever. So definitely take care of yourself. And then it is um, well, it's an industry of people. Like it's getting to know each other, it's friends and all that kind of stuff. But to Kathleen's point, like you could just be going just because you have a game that's fun or whatever. But board games are about people. Like it's hang out, we're playing together, we're sitting around.
Mhm.
Unless you designed a solo game, in which case it's a little bit different situation. But yeah, just hang out, find some time for yourself, find some time to obviously play test other people's games, and you never know like what shakes loose in your own brain. Like, oh wow, the way they did this point system, like that makes so much more sense for mine to do like escalating points instead of flat points or
Mhm.
whatever. So yeah.
Sweet.
All right,
So,
now playtesting. Go for it, Kathleen.
well, so design is fundamentally about understanding the needs of your user, period. And I run into this, especially teaching game design to kids. They design them for themselves more purely than any adult ever has. And we've seen some where you're like, this is yours. But it's one of those things where if a game doesn't work for people, then it's a treasure that you have for yourself, and that's great. But the thing is, how can you the best ways to what are the best ways you can get actual real feedback from people about what they do? Now there's like the very specific ask questions, they tell you things, and the types of questions you ask can be varied, and I want to hear about that. But there's two fun tricks that are two things that I've heard from designers and developers that I think are really clever. I wouldn't say they're necessarily, this is not what you whip out right away, but there's different perspectives. And so one of them, and this is my friend John Brieger, who's a developer, and we were having a weekend long play testing event. And I noticed like times of games, he'd say, hey, listen, I need to go to the bathroom. Play the game. If something comes up, you don't know what the rule is, make it up as you go. And then when I come back, just tell me what you did. And I was like, and after a while, I was like, oh, is he doing this on purpose? And so I even asked him, I said, because I was thinking, if there's a rule that he doesn't know what the right way is, like what would players authentically, kind of intuitively within the world, like want to do in that moment? And so I asked him, I'm like, are you doing this on purpose? Are you leaving because you really have to go to the bathroom? Or are you just wanting this to happen? And he's like, no, that's actually, no, I just drink a lot of water. He said, but that's a really so I mean that so there's like, and I think that's one thing is like again that's like level 8, that's not like play test number 1, but because if your game's a disaster, don't do that to people. But and I mean that the best way, we all make bad games. But the other one, and this one was from Eric Lang, and so a lot of now he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this a long time at the highest
Yeah.
level, all different levels. And again, so this is level 30 at this point, but or maybe not, because Eric, I think this will speak to party games too, is for him, he's not watching what happens on the board itself. he's watching the people around the table. He's watching like the things they say, the things they do, like when they're sitting back, when they start pulling out their phones, like the moments that he thinks are going to be really big moments to just kind of whimper. So he's really watching the people at the play test, not necessarily because he knows he's that good. He knows what's happening in the game and all that other stuff, but it's about how people are responding to it is what he's looking at. So, and I think because especially there's lots of time you're like, does this card work? Is this overpowered? All those legitimate things. But once you get past that, then you can really get to that level. So Eric, you're nodding a lot because I think with party games, it's probably well aligned.
Yeah, and I think all of that for sure for the party games. But even when I'm doing like strategy things, and this is as you get more playtest experience and again learn about people and pick up like little social cues. As you get better at reading people, you can notice like trying to figure out how to phrase this, like the good, like two people can say the same like word or have the same reaction, but one is like a positive version and one's a negative version. So an example would be you do it like a press your luck game or whatever, or push your luck game, and somebody busts or whatever, and they're like ah, and everybody laughs. Like that's a funny version. But if you know maybe something is too punishing in your system or whatever, and they're just like ugh, you know, like, okay, well, my whole term was wasted, or what, you know, like, then they're not experiencing the fun of the loss or the chaoticness, you know, whatever. So, or if you know, take that game, like someone gets attacked, you know, with some power or whatever, and they're like, oh, why oughta, you know, like it's like a fun back and forth versus, you know, somebody kind of, you know, oh, maybe they're constantly getting ganged up on and they're never getting to do anything cool because people are shutting them down constantly. Like that's not fun for them. So yeah, like just watch for that kind of stuff. Not only what people are saying, but how they're saying it. What are the organic reactions to things? What are the things they're laughing about or sighing about, or you know, if they have AP, if they're taking a really long time to make a decision about what card to play or whatever. Those are the things you want to maybe circle back to. Like, oh, there was one point where you took a little bit to try to figure out like what was your decision process, and yeah, so it's about there's a reading people component to this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that AP problem, I actually, because I time my play tests, I start my clock and I time my teach, right? And then I time the test and I use the little lap button for every round, so that I can start to track
Oh, cool.
statistics of like how long or because my games have been running long and I'm trying to like track are my changes making it better? And so I don't always remember, but then you can kind of look at it and be like, okay, a round is taking like 5 minutes. This is a 12-minute thing. That was probably 2 rounds, right? Unlikely to be three. So that can be useful again when you're at that part of the game. Um, I like to be able to there's sort of 2 pivots that I like to be able to do mid-game. So one is, Kathleen, to your point earlier of, like, you can just end it before the end. So I hit a point where I think I've seen, what I wanna see, and so I like to offer, right, "Hey, do you guys wanna end now? I've seen plenty, right? I can let you there's plenty of stuff to do." And it's really interesting the times when people say, "Actually, I'd like to keep going," right? Because that's a really good data point of like, I had a play test of a game that was a second play test, and I was like, "All right, we're calling it." And people were like, "But my next turn is great. I wanna." There was a thing of like, there's something compelling there that was important for me to know, right? That even though it was broken, they still felt compelled that they wanted to keep going. So it was encouraging. Um, I think the other thing that I like to do so I have a couple of tile placement games that I'm working on, and some of the getting the core loop right is figuring out what the tile placement rules are. And so I'll have a double-sided card of the placement rules, and we'll do like once around the table, and then I'll flip it over and be like, all right, now we're going to play the other rules. Right. And I just change the core rule in the middle of the game so I can A/B test with the same people. And it leads to really interesting conversation at the end of the game where they can actually like compare and contrast and talk about their feelings about it. And so I don't know, that could be interesting. I don't know if that's level 1, but I don't think it's level 30 either. Somewhere
Well,
there. Yeah.
I mean, at the end is if you make a good game, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
well, it just depends on who you are. Apparently, Vlada came up with code names in like a few hours and then spent 6 months testing it to make sure that the thing that worked the very first time actually did work. So, but,
Yeah.
kids made a lot of games. So,
Yeah.
it comes with time. It comes with time. I think, especially this again back to the human side of things, you have to know what works for you, you have to know what doesn't work for you and do that. So like Eric was saying, if you need to go sit out in your car, you go sit out in your car, because if you do everything, and this is something I've said ad nauseum to my students, and so here you guys go, but if you do everything the way that people tell you to do it, you'll be very good, but you will not be great, because great comes when you change the rules, redefine the rules, make your own rules, right? So with all of this grain of salt, you have to, you won't be able to do all these things. And that's because every person here is a different type of designer with a different type of outcome, a different type of goal. You have to figure out what works best for you, but also like what you think is going to work out for the players that you get to, the most important thing is that you just don't second guess yourself. Do what you think is best, but be open to learning from it afterwards. And I think if you can manage that cycle, because design is very much a mindset, not just an outcome, then I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This leads a little bit into sort of what do you do after, which I know we're not ready, but I
ready.
think
I think we're good. We're good.
knowing myself of how am I ready to process and when am I ready to process feedback. So I will sometimes come back from playtests and be in such a lather about like they didn't get it, nothing worked, and like that hour after that playtest is the most sort of potent brain ideas of like I've had some great ideas in that moment. And I've also had playtests where I came out of like that was a complete failure and I needed to sleep on it, or I needed to like put it down for a week and then come back with a little bit more space. And so I think figuring out where you are in terms of like, am I ready to process this right now? Or do I just want to like make sure I have clean notes and like come back to it when I've had a shower and a meal?
So
Just depending on how you feel.
Emily, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Does playtesting feel higher stakes more so for you now that you're publishing? And how has that impacted how you approach playtesting itself?
So I don't think it feels higher stakes to me, probably because I'm not feeling like everything I put out is going to be under like great public scrutiny. It feels really important, and I feel like I have a much longer playtesting path in front of me than if I was planning to sign it to another company and then they were going to do the development. So in some ways, I've pivoted into like development playtesting, which just feels like a longer road. And so yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm in some ways just trying to get the numbers, right? I'm like every playtest matters and I need a diversity of audiences and I need to start pinpointing uh what's happening based on who's playing. So like I playtest at like Unpub and Protospiel Online and stuff like that. I playtest at a local board game store, which has a different set of players than a design community. I did some playtesting out on an expo floor at PAX Unplugged this year, which again, different set of users. So what I'm finding is I need to branch out in where I find my playtesters so that I can get voices that aren't also game designers, because game designers are lovely and I love you all and your
The
feedback
worst.
is so great and also sometimes the worst.
The worst
But like,
playtesters. No, because I had a game with a publisher and one of the games, and they had a bunch of game designers play test it, and the feedback that I got was all here's what I would do if this was my game.
Yeah.
And this was a game that I had tested like, I mean, literally 100 times with students, so like I know what's working for the audience that I made it for kids,
Mhm.
not necessarily for adults. And so that was a whole other thing in terms of like what it was and what it ended up becoming. Um, and it was a good learning process, that's for sure. But designers, and I'm just as bad. I'm just as guilty. And you
Same.
know, because
Same.
my
Same.
job is to ask questions that you as the designer have to solve. My job is not to say like, what would be cool is if you did this, because I don't mind hearing that. Some
Mhm.
designers really don't want to hear your solutions. They only want to hear questions. And that's something for you to be mindful of and to think about for
Mm.
yourself. What do you want? And if you ask people, say, listen, I want I mean, you can ask me questions, but please don't tell me what you think should happen. I mean, it's hard. I think I'd rather have full open channels of communication. I'd rather hear
Yeah.
99 ideas I've already heard for that one thing. There's like, oh my God, yes, but
Yeah.
it just depends. It's okay to know yourself what you want. I keep the hose open, but game designers are real, real bad. In fact, one of my friends, JB Howell, who's this incredibly kind, giant of a man, and I started doing that to someone saying that we were playtesting. He's like, no, we're not solving this for him. I was like, you're right. We're not doing that. It was but listening to the questions, but it also made me shut up and listen to the questions that he was saying. I'm like, that was really good. So
Mhm.
I think as a designer, you learn as much you learn a ton from playtesting with other designers too. So positive and negative there.
Absolutely.
No. Anybody any
Yeah.
fun questions out there in TV land?
Yeah, while we
Yeah.
wait for questions, I'll just say, Kathleen, you mentioned earlier that you feel like sometimes people pull their punches, and I actually feel the other way. I feel like I've really had to come up with strategies for um, getting feedback at the end to off ramp people from. I mean, I've had playtesters who start to like explain to me game design 101. They're like, I feel like you clearly don't understand this mechanic. Let me tell you about it. And
Mm,
so like finding ways to like shut that down and focus people back on the questions that I asked, right? Like I'm asking questions about your experience. What was the most joyful moment you had during this game?
right.
And
Mhm.
the answer I sometimes get is, well, I found the pickup and maneuver mechanic to be da 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 da. And I was like, but what did you feel? Right? It's hard
Mhm.
sometimes to get people out of their analysis of the game to like, what was your actual experience of the game?
Yeah. Yeah. I know, because we love to solve problems. Like
Oh, we
that's why
do.
we got into this gig, right? Like I like to make up problems for myself, like in real life and off the table, and then I try to solve them.
So
Uh,
we got
ooh,
stuff in the chat. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yay!
Yeah.
Hey, Kat,
Z
there. Our job as a
z
playtester is identify the problem, not the solution.
Yeah, cat.
Yeah, I'm bad about that. I
I
like
I I will say I
um,
will say I think it's worth figuring out what your strategy is to elicit why people are suggesting that solution, right? Because they're solving a problem that they may have not been able to articulate the problem. And
that's
so
the point.
I take every solution with, okay, how do I figure out what they're trying to solve? And sometimes I know what they're trying to solve. It's the same problem I'm trying to solve, right? But sometimes
Yeah.
Mm,
they've zigged when I would have zagged, and so there's something interesting there.
yeah.
I
I've
think that's
in
kind of what
all of my Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that's kind of getting to Zoe Allred's point. When I play this,
Zoe.
I usually try Zoe. Sorry. When I play test, I usually try to convey what I did, why I did what I did, and how it felt. I often don't know if there's a problem or not with how I felt, but I figured that's up to the designers to resolve. So yeah, kind of explaining. Okay, well, it seemed to me that this aspect didn't really offer me a
Mhm.
lot of points, so I just ignored that. Or it seemed to me that, da 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 da. So here's why I was playing all these powers, or here's why I ignored this part of the board, or whatever. Kind of, hey, there we go, nailed it.
Yeah, he did.
um, but yeah, I'm similar to Kathleen, I kind of just let people say whatever they want, and then I write everything down and then translate it later or in the moment. Maybe ask clarifying questions. And
Yeah.
sometimes, yes, there are times where somebody is explaining like, oh well, in a trick taker, normally what's supposed to happen is blah 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 blah. It's like yes, I'm,
Well, if we all did the same thing over and over again, how fun would that be?
yeah, you just
We repeat those
okay,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of like Emily, like you were saying, like redirecting, like, oh, interesting, yeah. So how do you think this compares to that, or but or do you think that is it as somebody who clearly knows trick takers really well, or do you think it's frustrating that this is different, or do you think it's interesting that this is different? Kind of playing with that.
Yeah, because I think sometimes too is finding out what games people really enjoy can be helpful to why they're making the comments that they do. If you're playing a party game with an 18xxer, they're gonna
Absolutely,
probably hate
yes.
everything about your party
They'd
game.
like more engine building in that party game
Yeah,
Yeah,
too.
and it's like
yeah,
you're
absolutely.
you're double espresso and this is English breakfast. So yeah, like I prefer graph paper for feedback
Yeah.
and stuff because I can think in all different directions and then I've got grids so I can draw on. So pro tip, only buy graph paper. Line paper is silly. Okay.
Too restrictive.
Let's see. Favorite way someone broke your game and how did you react? That's such a good question.
Oh,
So this for me falls under the designer. So I have designers who I play test with who intentionally break your game. So I had someone, it wasn't my game we were play testing, but he saw that there was a real feel bad mechanic where one player could essentially knock the other one almost entirely out of the game. And so he did it to me. So he was like messaging me on the backside and he was like, I'm really sorry, but I just need to show this designer
I'm going
that
to
this is
destroy you.
possible. So he killed all of my people and I had like one person left. And I was like, I just have nothing left to do. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I have had people who the most common thing I see is hoarding of play elements, right? So like
Yeah.
there you can get cards, you can get tokens, and they just take as many as possible, and then I run out of stuff.
Mhm.
And so my general solution to that is now I always start with some sort of hand limit.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Uh,
Turtling's another one. Yeah, somebody just like, hoards all the defense or whatever it is. And um
mhm.
trying to think.
Let's see. Oh yeah, I had I'm working on a roll and write using Roman numeral dice. And you actually draw them up in columns to build the aqueducts. So it's a Roman write game.
Oh,
Oh,
cute.
What I
good
learned in
fun.
first play testing, one, people don't know Roman numerals the way I thought they did. So how to make that accessible is a real thing. Like I had a player aid that showed every single possible one that you could make on the board and stuff like that. That was just a vomit of information that was overwhelming. Like I broke my own game like 800,000 different ways. But I think part of like how I broke it was, or what was my most broken game, was I was trying to subvert a lot of the kind of tropes and expected elements of a roll and write, and doing so in games is always good. Like when someone's like, oh, this is not how a trick taking game is supposed to work, right? That's how we grow. But also in doing so, working so hard against those I'll just say tropes, I made it really confusing, not fun. There was a disconnect with what people expected. So the game is basically total go back to the drawing board as far as the core board and what it's going to look like. As far as the aqueducts, that's there. But everything that happens when players interact with that has to change. And so, like, but also awesome, like cool. Like I'm glad that happened, that I play tested it before saying, everybody loves Roman numerals. Oh no, they don't, So
Yeah.
so that was it. So how do you stop the ones who go off into a lecture? So I think this is one of those things where fundamentally people want to help. But especially, but people also overstep their bounds. Certainly I'm, pretty good at that in general, as a thing. But it's one of those things where it's really hard when someone is just taking up too much space and if it's off task. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the thing that you just have to do is you have to be kind, but you have to be polite and direct. Say, I really want to know more about your thoughts on this. After this play test, I want to sit down and talk with you like over coffee or whatever so that we can like go into detail about this. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation for both of us. But for right now, I need us to I've got these questions that I want to go through, and that's where I need to be. And you just have to be direct about it, shut it down while you're shutting it down.
Mhm.
You want to validate the person, their time, their thoughts, and yeah, you might have a half an hour conversation with somebody where you're like, fundamentally, we do not agree, and this is not going to change. But you just can't let them take it over. You just can't let it take it over. And it sucks. And people don't necessarily, game designers, we love designing conflict, but not necessarily going through it ourselves. But
Mhm.
just got to
Yeah.
connie people. I'm going to let you finish, but I'm actually not.
Yeah.
I already know where this is going.
Go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I mean, I've been struggling to think of how people like broke my games. I think for me, it's more thinking about things I need to be mindful of or sensitive about, as far as maybe like content in a party game, like prompts that I'm using or choosing
Mhm.
or whatever. Like, it's something that I think is universal. Like, oh, everybody knows. I don't know, Goldilocks or
Mhm.
whatever. You have somebody, and they're like, actually, in my culture, we don't tell that story. So I don't know, this entire round, I have no idea what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So for that, or like, I understand that the vibe of this game is really just to get to know each other, or just it's like a conversational thing, and we're just being silly. But the points make it seem more strategic than it is, and that's kind of detracting from the conversation. So how do I change my pitch, or how do I change the title of the game or the wording to make people understand that it's really just hang out, be silly time kind of thing, and the points don't really matter, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, those are the things that tend to pop up. It's not necessarily somebody breaking something. It's like kind of just like, oh, I need an X card in my game. Like I need a way for somebody to bow out of a prompt that they think is too racy or whatever.
Mhm.
It's just things that I wasn't sensitive to, and didn't realize was a thing until somebody said, hey, actually this makes me uncomfortable, or actually I'm really frustrated that my points don't really matter, or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pop back to Kat's question, and
Mhm.
I think Kathleen, your point of you need to shut it down in the moment is right on.
Mhm.
I do not go as far as to offer to talk to them later. That is, if
Most
I'm
of the
getting
time,
the
they don't
vibe,
really actually want to. They won't want to. They've got other plans. So
yeah,
there is a little bit of like,
yeah.
deflecting. But yeah, don't offer something unless
I
you actually would intend to do it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I tend to start with first off, I write something. I nod and I say, thank you," and I try to do a, "You know what? I think I've got the gist of what you're saying. I'd love to hear from," and point to someone else before I get to the like, I need to fully shut you down.
Mm,
But I've found I just need to not engage, but sort of say, "Yes, I've heard you," but not pull
Mhm.
more, right? I just sometimes that can be enough to get the conversation back on track,
Mhm.
before I have to pull out the big guns of like, "I'm gonna need to shut you down entirely," right? But again, I think to your point, always be kind, right? Always be, you have
Mhm.
no idea who this person is in front of you. It could be a publisher.
Right.
But I do think it's okay to stick to your guns without getting into an argument. Like, I don't wanna argue about the mechanics there. I don't wanna argue about the gameplay,
Mhm.
but I will admit, I have really struggled when it turns into feeling like I'm getting lectured on game design 101, and so the ask that I have, what actually happened to me at one point, the other play testers jumped in and were like, "I think you need to stop now," right? "I think that this has gone on
Mhm.
too far," right? "This is
Right.
her game," right? "I would love to give my input." So I think if you're in a situation where you're a playtester and you're seeing something go really south and the designer isn't able to get it back on track, like, I don't know, maybe just like help
Right.
out a little.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a rhino. I mean, my TED talk I gave once upon a time was be big, stupid, and run until you hit something. And especially after teaching middle school for 20 years, I have no problem with the redirect, but not everybody's like that. But that's okay. This is your game. This is your time. This is your space. And if you end up, making somebody mad because you held your ground on it, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we are
Let's
wrapping
wrap
up.
up. Hey, Eric, where can people find you?
Oh, that's a great question. I am at Slauson Designs. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. My website is also ericslauson.card with 2 R's.co, but that's linked in my my Twitter bio and everything. And just if you see me at a convention, come say hey, and I'd love to play test your game.
Cool. Emily?
I am Emily Keeps Kitties on Blue Sky and Discord, or you can find my website at pinkhawkgames.com or pinkhawkgames@gmail.com is my email address. And yeah, if you see me at a convention or if you're going to be at Gamma in a month here, come say hi.
Yeah, me too. I'll see you there, Emily.
Yeah.
Yay. And I'm Kathleen Mercury. My website, KathleenMercury.com, is where you can find all of my game design teaching resources for free. Not just if you want to teach game design, but if you actually want to do game design, there may be things that are of help to you. And yeah, I'm either at Mercury with 7 M's on socials or just Kathleen Mercury. So one or the other, but reach out. I love to help people. I love to play test. I love to just bounce ideas. So if you are interested, all of us, I'm sure, be happy if you reached out because that's why we're here. So
yeah,
cool. Thanks so much, everybody, for being part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Great conversation, y'all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Super cool.
Have a fun weekend.
All right. Bye.